Hello everyone, welcome back and thank you for joining me again in this fourth and final video of the series titled Kyrgyzstan, just another puppet state for the New World Order. And I'm going to include a video before I leave you, and it'll probably be towards the end of this last video. I'll show you some video footage of the April riots in Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, I just finished up on the last video, and I was talking about the Fabianism and the Leninism, two different styles of control or communism. And here you have the Soviets that took control of Kyrgyzstan in 1936 after the Chinese had given it to them previously, the Mongols. And so they continue to be controlled. And let's shoot to 1989, and well, let's just look at here. It says that, you know, basically their media was never really free, so they've never had a free press. They don't know what it is. It's always state-run. It's always state-run media. So you kind of have that going for them too. But look at what it says here, because it's pretty interesting. It says in 1989, protests flared up against the discriminatory policy of the Soviet government directed at pushing ethnic Kyrgyz inhabitants out of major cities, which could then be occupied by new settlers from Russia and other Soviet republics. And it says here, according to the last Soviet census in 1989, ethnic Kyrgyz made up some 22% of the residents of Bishkek, that's the nation's capital in the north, while more than 60% were Russians, Ukrainians, and people from other Slavic nations. Kyrgyzstan was the most Russified republic in the Soviet Union, according to the census, as more than 36% of all Kyrgyz citizens said Russian was their first language. And let's not forget that half of them died in civil wars. What did we say, in the 1830s and that? Well, the Russians were taking over from the Chinese, and the people were what? They were resisting the transfer of power from the Asians, from the Chinese, Mongolians, to the Russians, right? And the people, instead of fighting that, they fought each other, and half of them died. And so here we go with history repeating itself in 2010. Instead of, you know, as the powers are changing from the Russians now to the U.S., you see that from the Chinese to the Russians, and now it's into the U.S. Anglo-Saxon establishment's hands. So you see how that works? And instead of fighting both of them and getting rid of them and just fighting the same established families, they fight each other. And so you see here, no big surprise, in June 1990, ethnic tensions between Uzbeks and Kyrgyz surfaced in the Asha Oblast, where Uzbeks form a majority of the population. And then shooting here up to, or to a later date, into the 90s, and you have in 1990, the Askar Bakiyev become president. And then look at this. It says that on August 19th, 1991, when the State Emergency Committee, or Homeland Security, assumed power in Moscow, there was an attempt to depose Bakiyev in Kyrgyzstan. So basically, the Russians try to impose a coup after their president was elected. So after the coup collapsed the following week, Bakiyev and Vice President announced their resignations from the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And then you can see here, in a referendum on the preservation of the Soviet Union in March of 91, 88% of voters approved of the proposal to retain the Soviet Union as a renewed federation. So I'm seeing that as in the people wanted to be backed by the Soviet Union still, and that this guy was an upset. Askar Bakiyev. And of course, here you go, in 1992, Kyrgyzstan joined the United Nations. So right after he takes power, they join the United Nations, which is a pro-Western non-governmental organization. Another important point, current concerns in Kyrgyzstan include privatization of state-owned enterprises, expansion of Western influence, inter-ethnic relations, and terrorism. So this is what we were talking about earlier when we were saying that basically these puppet dictators or puppet presidents come in and then they sell off all the state-owned resources and that to these monopolies from other countries. And of course, that's where the expansion of the Western influence comes in, because those are the ones that want it, along with the Russians, and then inter-ethnic relations, which is pretty obvious. And so, after 14 years of having this person, this sellout, this puppet, Bakiyev, in control of their country, the Kyrgyz had a revolution. They titled it the Tulip Revolution, and that was in 2005. And of course, Bakiyev finally resigned. And they called it the Tulip Revolution because they didn't want it to sound like all the Western intelligence provocateuring revolutions, like the Green Revolutions and the Orange Revolutions, like in Ukraine and Georgia and Iran and all that are backed by the West. So they had to call it the Tulip Revolution. So Bakiyev fled the country. He went to Kazakhstan, then to Russia, and was replaced by Bakiyev. And the people voted for Bakiyev so that he would stop the corruption. They would stop the shut down the military base, the United States' military base, and to help them create some jobs and take care of the gas prices. But right off the bat, the people actually realized that this guy was a sellout and that he wasn't going to end the corruption. He wasn't going to fix the Constitution to give the power back to the people. So just a year and 2 years after he was elected, there was already large-scale protests going on. And then you have Russians, ethnic Russians, wanting to leave Kyrgyzstan. So there's people emigrating out of Kyrgyzstan. And you have a rising of nationalism in Kyrgyzstan, because the people, they want to be free. They want to have their own independent state. And check this out. According to Russia's investment bank, around 800,000 Kyrgyz migrant workers are in Russia, making up 40% of the Central Asian states' GDP. 40% of their GDP are from workers in Russia. The return of up to 300,000 Kyrgyz labor migrants from Russia and Kazakhstan has the potential to trigger a wave of social unrest, which is kind of ironic because when you read this article from Time, it says UN 400,000 uprooted by Kyrgyzstan unrest. So you got a bunch of these people that are returning home to try to find jobs, and there are no jobs, and they're trying to take it out on somebody. So on April 6, 2010, you had civil unrest, and protesters were attacking the state-run radio station along with the government office and facilities. That's when Bakiyev basically flew the coop, went to Kazakhstan just like his predecessor. He resigned, and then the Rosa Atunbayev took power. She was the foreign minister.
This is the main square in Bishkek where thousands of protesters have gathered. The police was firing stun grenades but also bullets. We just saw one person being killed. The crowd seems uncontrollable. They're angry. Some of them are really angry. They say that they want social changes in their country. And the person who just walked by, he said, "What are you filming? Why don't you film the guy who was just killed, murdered?"
A state of emergency has been declared in the capital of Kyrgyzstan, a U.S. ally and former Soviet state in Central Asia. President Kermanbek Baikyev and other officials, including his family, have been removed from power. Protests began when President Bakiyev refused to step down following what critics say were increasingly repressive policies and economic turmoil. Police tried to disperse protesters with tear gas. When that didn't work, they began using live rounds. A Russia Today correspondent explains the irony for Bakiyev.
President Bakiyev initially came to power following the Tulip Revolution 5 years ago, so he was actually backed by the same people who have now been demanding him to step down.
One opposition leader told Russia Today he blames Washington for supporting Bakiyev's Tulip Revolution. Kyrgyzstan has a U.S. air base which supports U.S. and NATO troops in Afghanistan.
And it's no mystery, folks. Kyrgyzstan is just another puppet of the New World Order. Thank you.